Welcome to this explainer. Look, let's jump right in, because the computer you've used for your entire life, the one with the familiar screen, the desktop icons, the drop-down menus, it's basically disappearing. The entire architecture that defined personal computing for decades is starting to just vanish into the background. And what's taking its place? A 70 billion transistor black box that makes decisions for you. Today, we're exploring the death of the traditional personal computer, how NVIDIA and Microsoft engineered this massive takeover, and what it all means for the device sitting on your desk right now. NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, actually calls this shift a reinvention of the computer as significant as the day the phone became the smartphone. I mean, that is a massive statement, right? We aren't just talking about getting a slightly faster laptop or a better graphics card. We're talking about a fundamental shift where the PC transitions from being a simple tool that waits for your commands into an active, thinking teammate.
Section 1. The death of the PC. We're moving away from a collection of separate computer parts into a single computing organism. Because of this new unified architecture, the sheer scale of what your machine can do is honestly staggering. All of those separate components we used to rely on have been reduced onto a single piece of silicon. And as a result, a thin laptop, with all-day battery life, mind you, can now run an AI model with 120 billion separate settings or parameters right inside it. Think about that for a second. Work that once required a massive climate-controlled server room now literally fits into your backpack. It can perform 1,000 trillion calculations every second, entirely locally. But this incredible leap forward on your desk didn't actually start on your desk.
Section 2. NVIDIA's trillion-dollar coup. To really understand how they took over your laptop, we have to look at how the former undisputed king of computing lost the war. Okay, let's dive into this architectural split. Traditional Intel and AMD designs, you might know them as x86, are fantastic at following rules. A traditional CPU goes through instructions one at a time, making very clear yes or no decisions. This is absolutely perfect for something like running a spreadsheet or booking a flight, where each move waits on the one right before it. But modern AI, it doesn't think in clean steps. It works by guessing. It runs massive amounts of basic arithmetic across billions of values all at the same time to find the best fit. NVIDIA had a massive head start here because its graphics chips were already built to solve thousands of problems simultaneously for rendering video games. The future was already perfectly optimized for them. And the result of that head start was absolute domination. Just look at this. Between 2021 and 2025, Intel, the company that set the pace for the entire industry, saw its data center market share completely collapse from roughly 68% down to just 6%. Meanwhile, NVIDIA's share absolutely surged to 86%. When AI became the most important thing in computing, Intel desperately tried to close the gap, but the work itself had fundamentally changed. NVIDIA practically took over the entire market. Which brings us to this frankly staggering number. $5 trillion. By June 2026, NVIDIA became the most valuable company on the planet, reaching a valuation of around $5 trillion. No business in history had ever been valued that highly. But winning the data center wasn't enough for them. To take over the personal computer on your desk, they needed absolute control over the hardware ecosystem. And that leaves the brands you actually buy from, like Dell, HP, Lenovo, Asus, in a really brutal spot. NVIDIA keeps around 75 cents of gross profit on every dollar it sells. The laptop brands, they basically just design the plastic case and the cooling fans, scraping by on razor-thin margins. They don't own the processor or the AI software that decides what the machine can do. They merely assemble the box.
Section 3. Microsoft's forced hardware swap. Because a massive takeover like this really only works if we, the users, have nowhere else to go.
Let's walk through this timeline of what the industry is calling the Great Refresh. Microsoft is basically the ultimate enforcer of this new era. They ended all support for Windows 10 in October 2025. That move alone pushed a massive wave of people toward buying something new, whether they wanted to or not. But Microsoft also set a strict new baseline for their next generation of software. To run the new wave of Windows, your computer now needs a dedicated AI chip rated at a minimum of 40 TOPS. That's trillions of operations per second. It also needs at least 16 gigabytes of memory and 256 gigabytes of storage. This is easily the biggest forced hardware swap the industry has seen in years. So what is the reward if you meet these new hardware demands? Well, Microsoft is dangling some highly advanced AI features. We're talking about live audio translation while you speak, generating images right on your device without needing the internet, smarter search options, and an assistant with a literal photographic memory that can look back through all your past work. But here is the catch. If your current laptop falls short of those 40 TOPS, these features either disappear into the cloud or they simply won't run at all. Now, remember that 40 tops baseline Microsoft set? Well, NVIDIA's RTX Spark chips sails past it, hitting over 1,000 tops. That's more than 20 times what Windows asks for. It's built for what comes after today's features. And what about your older software written for those traditional x86 Intel chips? Windows just translates them on the go through a layer called Prism. So the old software still works, but it runs slower, acting merely as a guest on this new architecture. NVIDIA's hardware is the new native language. Section 4, the hidden AI energy tax. Let's pivot for a second and look at the physical and environmental costs of having an AI assistant constantly awake and guessing in the background. Check out this number, 0.3 watt-hours. This is roughly the amount of electricity required for a traditional, basic web search. It's incredibly small, something we do dozens of times a day without a second thought. But a single AI request? It takes 2.9 watt-hours. According to estimates by the International Energy Agency, that is nearly 10 times more power-hungry than a standard search. When you multiply that by billions of queries every single day, you are looking at nearly 10 terawatt-hours of extra electrical demand every single year. And this has sparked a massive ongoing debate. On one side, leaders like Sam Altman and researchers at Epoch AI argue that newer models are getting much more efficient, cutting the cost per question down really fast. But here is a basic rule of economics. When something becomes cheaper and easier to use, we don't use less of it. We use much more of it. If an assistant takes zero effort to summon, we will use it for everything. And we are already seeing the real-world impact of this demand. Driven largely by the data centers powering these systems, Microsoft's own emissions have risen by nearly 30% since 2020. And hey, this energy tax isn't just sitting in a distant data center somewhere. It's literally sitting right in your lap. The tactile, physical stakes of running massive 120 billion parameter models locally are very real. Because the machine is constantly running staggering amounts of arithmetic in the background, your laptop fan kicks in way more often. The physical machine runs noticeably hotter against your legs. And that battery that used to easily last you all day, yeah, it starts begging for a charger by mid-afternoon. Finally, Section 5, the end of user control. Because beyond the hardware and the energy, there is a profound, almost philosophical shift happening here. We are witnessing a total loss of transparency in how we operate our machines. I mean, for decades, using a computer meant knowing exactly where things were, right? You dug through folders, you clicked menus, you set things up yourself. Now we are being handed the AI teammate. Give it enough time and it remembers yesterday's work, it sorts your messages, and it drafts replies entirely in the background before you even sit down. It operates inside a sealed box, relying on a cloud of odds rather than neat, fixed rules. You can still reject a step, sure, but you no longer orchestrate the process. A laptop bought in early 2024 is practically a relic today. On those older machines, you had visible control. You navigated the folders, you owned a general-purpose tool that answered directly to you. In the new AI era, that visible control disappears. The desktop is still there, but it's really just a front for older programs. The actual thinking happens in a sealed logic loop owned entirely by the NVIDIA and Microsoft duopoly. You no longer tell the computer how to do something, you just give it a goal. The fundamental understanding of how a computer actually works is fast becoming a forgotten skill. So what does this all mean for us? As software gets written exclusively for this powerful new hardware, older machines will simply become redundant. The era of the PC as a transparent tool you completely control is ending. If a computer's intelligence and its very capability now depend entirely on whether you can afford the expensive, sealed box hardware required to run it, who gets to think with it, and who gets left behind? The real divide moving forward isn't just about technical specs. It's a profound question of access and affordability. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this leaves you with plenty to think about the next time you open your laptop.